Welcome to Writing on Wednesdays, which is a new series that I'm starting where I'm going to talk to you about writing. And so since this is my first video, I thought I would do a little bit of an intro to me so you can understand what my expertise in writing is in case you're unfamiliar. But I'm not planning on going into this in every video, so don't worry and think this is all I want to talk about. It is my career. I've been a published author for 10 years now. Well, coming around 11 years now. But I've been writing basically my entire life. Like, since I learned how to write, I was writing stories and I knew I wanted to be a writer, like literally since forever. But I didn't go to school for it. I have no formal writing education. I mean, I took English in high school, and I took some creative writing classes at my community college, but I didn't like get like a bachelor's degree in English or anything. I finished writing my first novel when I was 17, and I started to get it published, and I got met with a ton of rejection, which is a fairly common occurrence in the writing industry. And I ended up writing more books that were still getting rejected. And so when I was 25, I started self-publishing with ebooks through Amazon and Barnes & Noble and some of the other e-retailers. And that's kind of when my career took off. In the past 11 years, I have published over 25 books. A little more than half of them have been with a publisher, and a little less than half have been self-published. So I do have experience on both sides of that coin with self-publishing and traditional publishing. Two of my series, the Trill and the Cannon Chronicles, have made the New York Times bestseller list. I write mostly young adults and teen paranormal romance, a little bit of horror, a little bit of gothic romance, but I would say I would generally classify them as paranormal romance. I would say that's where what my expertise lies in then. And so that's where I'm coming from. So all the writing advice I give is based on the perspective of my career and my experiences. And the number one thing that I always say about writing advice is just take it all with a grain of salt. Every writer is different. You find the things that work for you and the things that speak to you. But every writer's voice is different, and every journey we take to get the words on the paper is different, and that's okay. So these are just tips and tricks and things that work for me, and they might not work for you, and if they don't, that's okay, and if they do, great. I've already gotten a lot of questions about writing, and but feel free to comment below and ask more questions. I plan to kind of try to like group the videos together and kind of make like themes, but when I talk about stuff. But this kind of first one is just like a general introduction and who I am. One question that I get that I've seen around, how do you start writing? And you just start wherever works for you. I know that's kind of like the lamest answer, but that's really the truth. But the only way to write is to write. So you just have to do it, whether you're writing on your phone or your handwriting or writing on a laptop or whatever it is you're doing. However you connect, that's the most important thing. I also think that one way to always get inspiration for me is to read and to watch things and to listen to music, to consume things that I find entertaining and invigorating, and kind of get my brain flowing. Like, what stuff makes me think? What stuff is getting me, like, what stories do I latch on to? And so that's like always, if you're stuck, if you have like a kernel of an idea and you don't know where to go with it, try to find something kind of, I think, around your book, like maybe a similar a genre, and read it and see what they're doing, and it'll also get stuff going. Your brain will go, well, the character did XYZ here, but I think it would be cooler if the character had done something else. And so then you can have your whole offshoot ideas of that. Like, I mean, sometimes even reading a frustrating book can help give you ideas on where to go and what to write. I mean, for me, I really think of my writing style is very much like making a collage. I've always been really into making collages, and I'll probably talk to them about that more in other videos. But so I it's just pulling a little bit of like everything that I love together and then just kind of putting it in a blender. And also, my writing process is always changing. Like, each book I write is always written a little bit different than the other books that I wrote. And I've actually really spent a lot of this past year being kind of like really introspective and looking at my writing process and looking about what works for me, what works for readers, and what isn't working. And so that's been kind of an interesting thing. And so I've really changed up my whole writing process. I used to be a lot more structured, but I think that I was getting in the way of the the stories that I wanted to tell. I was getting in my own way. I do that a lot. So I think that that's something for me personally, but some people like have a lot of structure and they do like really in-depth outlines, and that's what I used to do, and I found that to be actually very hindering and hampering. And I think I'll go into outlining and stuff more in other areas, just because I don't want to make these too long. And when you're writing a story or a novel or anything you're writing, just start wherever you want to start. And because I think the first draft you should write for yourself. If you're not in love with what you're writing, no one else will be in love with it either. And so I feel like the first draft, you just have to be like passionate about and just go where you want to go. The second draft and revisions is when you start to like really hate your work, and that's when you start to tear it apart. But when you're doing the first draft, don't let yourself tear it apart or nitpick too much, because like for me that slows the very flow of what's going on, and you can get stuck just rewriting a paragraph for like days, and that's not good for anyone. And so I think that's you just go forward and then come back and change it. And there's even stuff like, it's so easy to edit and revise and things, so if you want to change a character's name or add something or realize you should have, I think it's so easy to do. My first drafts have now become like very, very messy. I handwrite them and I've got notes all over it. I'm like, add stuff here, switch stuff around there, and it's a total mess. But then my first, it's very easy to write, and it flows, and I'm just able to get to the end, and then I find it's a lot easier to fix things. And it's also, once you're in the editing phase, you can pull back and be more objective. But when you're writing it, you should be immersed in it. I feel like that, well, at least, I mean, for me, that being immersed in it is much better. I'm really like in the headspace, and I'm just going where it's going, and it's messy and dark and foggy, and it's kind of just unflowing as I go along. And then in the end, I can see the full shapes of everything, and I can move stuff around and rearrange. But I don't know what the room looks like yet, though, so I don't want to get too bogged down with saying this piece has to be here, because it might turn out that it doesn't fit there at all. And I think I have in the past done that to myself, where I got married to concepts or ideas or parts of my outline, and I don't think that's good for the books or myself. I don't think it makes the writing process easier or more enjoyable, and I don't think that makes the books more enjoyable. But again, that's me personally, so take that all with a grain of salt. Thank you for tuning into my first Writing on Wednesdays. I will be back next week with answering more of your questions and giving more tips for writing. Feel free to drop a comment or question below, and I will try and answer it or incorporate it into future videos. I hope that I've been helpful, and happy writing.